Fala, gurizada, David na área, aqui nosso segundo cafezinho nesse dia aí, domingão. Cara, para quem não sabe, sou o David, sou investidor de criptomoedas. O projeto que a gente está falando no momento é a Ripple XRP. Se tu é novo no canal, se inscreva, deixa esse like aí que me ajuda muito aqui no YouTube. Felizmente a plataforma gira em torno de inscrição e like. Tô fazendo isso, o YouTube entende que vocês estão curtindo o conteúdo. Começa a divulgar para mais pessoas que têm interesse no assunto, que é criptomoedas. Outro recadinho básico é o nosso grupo do Telegram, tá aqui na descrição do vídeo, não cobro nada para te entrar. A única coisa que tu tem que fazer é instalar o Telegram no teu celular, teu computador, clicar no link e fazer parte da família do café. Lá vai ter umas regrinhas básicas para ter um bom convívio lá dentro. O principal objetivo do grupo é adquirir e compartilhar conhecimentos. E essa é a pegada, gurizada. Então nós vamos para a segunda notícia. Lá na gringa, lá saiu no XRP Right Now, do nosso amigão Ripple Van Ripple, falando de novo de Swift e Ripple, que vai acontecer, cara. A partir do momento que a Ripple substituir a Swift, nem que seja 10%, já vai mudar totalmente o nosso foco aqui. Bitcoin esquece, não tem mais nada a ver com XRP. Então, gurizada, bora pro vídeo, vamos ver o que o nosso amigão vai falar. Geralmente ele vem com notícias tops. Então, bora pro vídeo, play.
To a Reuters report, the Turkish subsidiary of Binance, BK Technology, has been slammed with an 8 million lira, it's about 751,000 fine by the county's Financial Crimes Investigation Board. What are we seeing? Well, we're seeing Binance in some trouble again. We're seeing Binance being sued yet by another country for illegal operations with their exchange. Nothing new here. I mean, Binance was taking a beating for quite some time. Kind of went away. Now it looks like it's ramping back up. And an XRP Crypto will put this at 1.6 billion. I covered this. If you didn't watch yesterday's Christmas Day video, my special, mass amounts.
Cara, final de ano teve muita movimentação de XRP no mercado de corretora para carteira e vice-versa, cara. Os caras mexeram muito em XRP. Foi bilhões. Deu 1,68 bilhão de XRP movimentado. É muita coisa mesmo. Deixa porque o preço tá baixo. Cara, são questões aí que eu digo de paciência. Tem muito o que fazer, cara. Se você tá focado no projeto, continua. Que quando der o estouro, mano, vai ser absurdo. Então bora pro vídeo, play. Não é conselho de compra, hein, cara. Lembrando, é conselho de estudos. Bora pro vídeo, play.
Folks, of XRP being moved, and it's being moved to wallets and different exchanges, you want to just know, what are they doing out there? That's what I want to know. And one day we're going to look back on all this and we're going to be like, wow, that's why all that XRP was moved. Trust me when I tell you. Now, we're jumping right into the main piece here, folks. We're about to talk about the Ripple and Swift connection. I'm going to show you two clips, okay? This one's from 2018. This is the old CEO. He's no longer the CEO. He stepped down at some point. I believe it was 2019. Could have been early 2020. He's the old CEO, Gottfried Lebrant. He used to be, you know, the guy all about Swift's the best system. We never need to go to blockchain. Well, I want you to watch how his tune changed from 2018 to when he was on stage with Brad in 2019. We're gonna play this clip, but he talked about and commented on how Brad Garlinghouse made a statement that Swift is its old horse and buggy, and that Ripple's coming out. You know, they're the car. This guy just said he doesn't see it, he doesn't believe it. I mean, this is the same guy who never made a change to the Swift system for quite some time. Let's listen to this, then we're gonna segue into a 2019, right before the man, I pretty much got kicked out of his CEO spot, and we'll go into that. Here we go.
But right now, I think blockchain is more an enabling technology,
so Swift is studying blockchain at this time. Now, Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, he characterized GPI
as largest man in the U.S., sixth richest man in the U.S.
I think for a moment there he was, wasn't he? XRP, yeah.
For a brief moment.
He described GPI as a horse and buggy, and Ripple is an automobile. I think he wanted to say race car, but he said automobile. I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, he's basically saying that you're still outdated, even though...
O Garlinghouse deu com os dois pés nele, né, meu? Vamos ver o que ele vai falar.
You've done this crash program.
Yeah, let's see. We could also. There's many analogies you could use. My favorite analogy right now is I drive an electric car,
Right.
a Tesla, I have to say, and that's an interesting one. You could say Tesla is the future, and the old cars are the past. I have to say, it's a beautiful experience to have an electric car. I love the concept, but it's still an American car, and I can say if I could get a German car with German engineering and the electrical thing, that would be my choice.
see.
So if I could get correspondent banking and get the new technology inside, maybe that would be a good thing. The other thing he said is this is a classic David Goliath thing.
He did.
Well, if I'm now facing somebody who, through this crypto thing, is sitting on 100 billion in war chest and has unlimited funding, who's the Goliath out here? But, and
Well,
I'm just a banking corp.
Cara, ele se autodomina o Golias. Aí o Golias tá sendo derrubado pelo Davi, cara. A partir do momento que a XRP pegar só 10% das transações da Swift, cara, a parada muda. É outro cenário, mano. Esquece esse cenário que a gente tá vivendo agora. O atual cenário muda, cara, da RippleNet. Bora pro vídeo.
He'd have to convert that to fiat, and I think that would be interesting to kind of see that develop.
That would be a challenge.
But just a little bit about why cryptocurrencies. I mean, you've said this; they won't work in the cross-border payment system at this time.
Well, I think there was a recent article in which people asked banks, are they ready to embrace crypto? And the issue is with that volatility that they have right now. It's the volatility. It's also the AML part of it. It was interesting. I had somebody come up at this conference to me and say, listen, have you have experience with people who look at the blockchain and the transaction patterns to sort of spot good Bitcoins from bad Bitcoins, AML on the blockchain? Not easy, partly because there's a whole slew of technologies to obfuscate the provenance of Bitcoin, right? If you pay ransomware, you would like to trace your coin to be able to get back your ransom later. There's essentially a number of technologies that slice and dice it to the extent that you can't.
All right, so there you have it. He talks about volatility and how XRP can never be used because it's so volatile. This was his tune in 2018. This was his tune as he was still CEO before he was flushed out. And I do believe the year was 2019. I believe it was June before he was forced out to step down as the Swift CEO. Why was he forced to step down as Swift CEO? I'll tell you why. Because he never did anything to improve the Swift messaging system. 40, 50, 60, however many years the thing was been running, nothing was ever done to improve the technology. What happens when we see that? Look at AOL. Nothing was ever done because they were the leader, right? Sending out all those discs in the mail. Every time there was a different version. Got you on. But they never really did any type of improvements. AOL was always AOL. Nothing really changed on the front or the back end. They just had a different version that came out. They might have put a few different colors in there. Well, this guy from Swift, he's like, no one is out there to compete with us. We are going to do what we continue to do because the banks are going to be forced to use us. Well, guess what? Ripple comes out with XRP. Guess who Godfrey LeBrant ran into at a conference? Bob Way. Those who don't remember, Bob Way was a Ripple employee, one of the first 7 or 8, maybe even 6. Bob Way told him what Ripple was doing and how they were going to compete with Swift. What did the CEO of Swift do? He called an emergency meeting. Everyone got into a boardroom. Everyone sat in that boardroom with the doors locked until they came up with an improvement. Well, it was a little too late because the only improvement they came up with was Swift GPI, which was still a messaging system. All it did was try to put a fancy new front end on top of the old dinosauric GPI system, or the old Swift system. So what did it actually do? It allowed them to finally track where the money was going, and it allowed them to tell them the fees. Big deal. It still took 3 to 5 days. It was still super expensive. They didn't do anything that really helped out the consumer. So here comes Ripple. So Godfrey LeBrant talks all this game back in 2018, but then he gets on stage with Brad Garlinghouse in 2019, and he tried to bring up the same analogy, how cryptocurrency, especially XRP, could never be used because it is so volatile. But the man was then put into his place. Have a listen to this.
Proposition of Ripple, I think, is the cryptocurrency, the XRP. I think that's another one worthy of debate. There we do find that the banks are also, at least when they talk to us, they may tell you different things, they are hesitant to convert things into a currency, a cryptocurrency right now, because of the volatility in the currencies, because of the fact that you don't have the deep liquidity that you have in, for example, the dollar as a clearing unit at the end of the day. So again, when we engage banks, we don't find them ready for a model where you convert it into crypto and then convert it back, and that has to do with many things: regulation, volatility, and all the things that are being debated around crypto. But that's a whole separate debate.
This is, well, it's not really a separate debate because I think there's two important things about this, and Gottfried mentioned this earlier. Swift today is a one-way messaging framework. It actually isn't a liquidity provider, right? It's Swift messaging partnered with bank liquidity, When we think about an internet of value, it's a mixture of two-way messaging frameworks, moving to real-time, a chatty protocol, if you will, coupled with real-time liquidity. And I hear people talk about volatility, and I feel like they're propagating misinformation. The volatility risk of fiat, volatility is just a mathematical calculation of time times volatility. If you hold fiat for, let's say, an average SWIFT transaction today is in the order of magnitude 2 days, that's about 180,000 seconds. An XRP transaction is 3 seconds. So if you take a low volatile asset times a long duration, fiat, or a high volatility asset versus a very, very short amount of time, it turns out mathematically there's less volatility risk in an XRP transaction than there is in a fiat transaction. Wow. The difference is you have market makers. When you do a SWIFT transaction, there's banks saying, there's a market maker saying, I'll lock in that rate. I'll take the volatility risk for the next 2 or 3 days. With XRP, you don't have to do that because it settles so quickly.
Godfrey, this gets...
So there you have it. Brad put...
Meu Deus. Perfect. Cara, esse CEO aí teve que dar vaga pela Swift, cara. A Swift contava muito com o nome e a predominância dela nos bancos, cara. Na verdade, ela contava mais com os bancos do que com a competência dela. Era uma parada que o banco usava, não tinha outra maneira de usar para fazer transações internacionais e eles se acomodaram com a concorrência. Na verdade, não tinha concorrência. E agora a XRP, a Ripple, entrou com tudo, cara. Cara, que eu digo, a partir do momento que nem eu fiquei com isso que o Pablo me falou, a partir de que o cenário, a Ripple entrar no sistema para substituir a Swift, nem que seja 10%, cara, a parada muda de figura, cara. É outro cenário que não pode botar limite na moeda. A XRP. Aí que vai separar, até chegar nesse momento, os homens dos meninos, cara. Porque tu vai começar a ver coisas loucas na tua conta. Então, cara, aqui o Brad Garlinghouse, olha como é que foi em 2019. Ele falou uma parada em 2018, ele voltou com o mesmo, vamos dizer assim, com o mesmo texto de 2018 para 2019 para falar com o Brad Garlinghouse. O Brad Garlinghouse deu um perfect no cara. Você nota, a rede é isso. Cara, me fugiu a palavra. A volatilidade é mais arriscada na tua rede do que na minha. Cara, o cara não teve o que responder, mano. Então, bora pro vídeo.
Businessman in place. He was all talk in 2018, 2019. He gets kicked out as CEO of Swift. Brad tells him that there's more volatility in the Swift transaction than an XRP transaction, which is 100% true. So where does this all lead us? This all leads us to Swift Go, where Swift just announced that they're going to start looking into blockchain and digital technology to help fix their broken system. Because what is it? It's either adapt or die, folks. That's what I've been saying for quite some time. Well, Swift has to adapt. So here's the first article, the market participants, right? These are the initial institutions that will be participating in Swift. There's 123 different banks that are on board. But if we look at the vendors, these are the vendors that actually are going to help with the Swift transactions. And we look at the Ripple tie-in folks. ACI, Ripple tie-in, FIS, FizzRub, those are all Ripple ties-in that aren't highlighted. The ones that are highlighted, Finster, Oracle, Volante, and Temenos. All of these have RippleNet integrated into their products for the banks to be able to tap into when they want. As we go even further, you can see here, ECS, FID, Pelican, and FIS too. Plus he says FIS talking about Ripple blockchain. So I mean, pretty much that whole list, all the vendors that are going to be using this. And we look at some of these banks. Barclays is on there, Citibank, right? These Abu Dhabi banks, DBS, Deutsche Bank. We all know HSBC. We all know the ties in Wells Fargo with Ripple, Viacom Bank, with Ripple, Net, XRP, and now we're seeing SwiftGo participants using the application vendors. So where does this all lead us? This all leads us to a world where the two giants collide. There is no going about this. There are no other systems out there that has the liquidity, partnerships, time in the market, and company behind it like Ripple does. Swift was really running into a dead end. They tried to work around the system, but they failed. Okay, they tried to make Swift GPI. They thought that Ripple would go away at this point. Well, it's not. Ripple is here to stay. XRP is here to stay. The way it is being positioned between the central banks and between these other banks around the world, remittance companies, Swift has one of two options: adapt or die. And what are we seeing now? We are seeing them adapt because the CEO who was so against blockchain and never made any improvements into the system is no longer the big hurdle in place. He is gone. Now we have whoever else is running Swift right now. We have all the banks that have finally realized that they need to do something, unless they're not going to be around when it comes to this digital technology era that we are entering, folks. Exciting times ahead. 2022 is going to be a banger. I got a feeling we are nowhere near end of this bull market. We are just in a little bit of...
Cara, foi dado o vídeo, muito bacana o vídeo. Ripple vai cada vez mais puxar porcentagens da Swift para sua rede. Cara, já vi notícia que postei no canal que os integrantes da Swift vão ter a imigração facilitada para Ripple. Cara, é 1000 vezes eles fazer um acordo e andar junto do que não ter nada, cara. Então eu acho que a Swift vai fazer isso, nem que seja de 10%, cara. A partir do momento que a Ripple entrar no mundo da Swift, cara, vai ser desvinculado do Bitcoin, a parada é outra. Nada, o recadinho, cara, espero que tu tenha curtido o vídeo, se inscreva, deixa o like, não se esqueça disso, isso me ajuda muito. Até a próxima, pessoal, valeu!